How's it going, guys? So in today's tutorial, we're going to be creating this animation right here. And if you're intimidated by rigid body dynamics and physics and all these simulation stuff, this one should really help you because it shows they're super approachable. So we're just going to set up the scene, make sure everything works, and we're going to do our duplications, rotate it, animate it, and bake out all of those keyframes. Really simple stuff here. Then we're going to apply some materials to that, add some lighting, and render it out, and it'll look really cool. I also want to tell you guys, Real-Time Materials is 35% off for the rest of this month. Use the code 2years at checkout on blendermarket.com and get that 35% off. Real-Time Materials has now existed for 2 years, and it is such a blessing that you guys have been able to support me through it and really has helped me take YouTube full-time and make more tutorials like this. But with that being said, let's get into the tutorial. All right, first step is to set up the whole scene, make sure everything works. First thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and get a cylinder and then give it 65 on the vertices. I'm gonna hit tab. Then what I'm gonna do is in the edit mode, I'm just gonna shrink it a little bit like this and then scale it up. This is gonna be kind of our base plate. I'm gonna apply that scale just in case. Next thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and hit Shift D and then bring it up, and we're just going to model the walls. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit tab, go here to the face select this guy, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit I and just kind of decide how thick you want your walls to be. I like right about here. I'm going to hit X and click faces. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the edge select mode, hold down Alt and select this edge, hold down Shift and select that edge, hit F3 and type in bridge edge loops. So bridge edge loops right there, and that's going to finalize that. And then you can just bring it down. I'm going to hit the tilde key. It's right above the tab key. I'm going to click front, and then we're just going to bring it down until it just touches. Actually, well, let's go ahead and scale this guy up a little bit first. So scale him to however tall you want your balls to be. Make them generally about as tall as the spheres in the animation are going to be. That's really going to help you from things falling out, even though we're going to kind of prevent that. It'll really help that illusion. And then I'm going to go back and bring this down so it just barely touches. All right, perfect. Now we have this set up. Now I'm going to hit Shift A and go ahead and create the little pillars that are going to be in the middle. So I'm going to click on cylinder, and we're going to go here to 35. 35 here on the vertices. And then we're just going to bring it up, scale it down, and then make it about as tall as you want it to be. I'm going to have it right about there. Looks really good for me. And if we go to the transform settings, I'm just going to make it a bit thinner. And then we're going to hit Control A, apply that scale. I'm going to hit Tab, and then click on, go to Edge Select, hold down Alt, and select this edge. And here in the bevel, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a round top, just just for style. And then I'm going to go ahead and shade smooth. All right, so this is that object. Now what we need to do is get an icosphere, and I'm going to subdivide it 3 times. So 3 on the subdivisions, and then I'm going to bring it up and then scale it to, right about here. And I'm going to shade smooth that. All right, now let's get the rigid bodies working. So I'm going to click on this guy, and then, well, first let's go ahead and parent everything. So I'm gonna hit Shift A and get an empty, and then I'm gonna hit, I'm gonna click this guy, hold down Shift, this guy, and then select the empty, Control P for parent object, and then you can select on the empty and hit R twice just to make sure everything's parented properly. Now what I'm gonna do is let's go ahead and set up our rigid bodies. So we're gonna click on this guy, we're gonna go here to the Physics tab and click on Rigid Body, active to passive. Passive objects are when objects are going to hit it. It's kind of stay still. We're going to click on animated, and then we're going to click on mesh, and that's going to make sure that works really well. On sensitivity, you can bring your margin down to 0.01, and I'm just going to highlight that. Copy it. Then here on this bottom one, we're going to do the same thing: rigid body, passive, animated, mesh, and then on margin. Now, margin is basically how close it will allow objects to hit it. Sort of a good margin buffer, prevents things from intersecting. But this one, it just needs to be a bit more sensitive because it's going to look relatively real. And then on this guy here, we're going to do rigid body, passive, animated, and mesh. Paste that in. And the last one, rigid body, active this time. Keep it on convex hull, and we press play. You can see now it's working. We can maybe bring him over to the left. Perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is save my file. Save this, please. Save often on this one. These rigid bodies can really crash your computer. You know, even the beefiest computer can sometimes kind of get a little wild with it. All right, so now what we can do, I'm going to move him over, and we're just going to go ahead and distribute our little pillars. So since it's already parented, it's going to automatically parent to everything else. So I'm going to go to the top, bring him over here, Shift D, bring him over here. And then I'm going to hit Shift D and R, something like this. Now it's not going to look perfect, but that's okay. It's all for fun. So I'm hitting R and then rotating. And then I'm going to take this guy and bring him to the middle. This guy, bring him to the middle. And that's kind of the composition that really looked cool for me. Now we're going to get one more object to make sure everything looks good. So what I'm going to do is Shift A, get a sphere. I'm going to hit the tilde key and go to the top and then just kind of scale it to fit like that. Then I'm going to bring it up. Tilde key, click the front. I'm going to hit Tab for edit mode. Click on the X-ray button. Click on the face select, and I'm going to click and drag X faces. And we're making a lid, and that's to prevent the spheres from jumping out. And so we're just going to bring this down. Now we're going to go ahead and make him rigid body, active to passive, animated, mesh. And we don't really need to worry about margin. Click on the transform settings over here, and we're going to go here to viewport display, and we're going to go to wire, and that's just going to, so we can see through it and see everything. But you can also throw a modifier, a mask modifier on that as well. But I'm going to leave it just for my own sanity. I'm going to click that, hold down Shift, click on the empty, Control P, object, and just to double check, all necessary parented objects are parented. Now what we need to do is animate this guy. We're going to do 300 frames, which means so we need to click here in our rigid body world. We need to go to the cache and tell it also 300 frames, and I'm going to hit Control S and save. So this is where we're going to bake our animation, but this right here is super important. What we're going to do is animate our object, and so we're going to go animate it on the Z axis, and then in your preferences, just to double check here in the animation tab, go here to Bezier, and that's going to be really fun. So we're going to animate here on the Z axis on this empty, but what we need to do is get another empty to allow it to rotate and spin like that. It's weird and confusing, but I had to do a little bit of looking up things to figure this one out. Because basically, just to show you the problem, I want it to spin like this, but I also want to rotate it like that, but look what happens. That's not going to work. So unless you guys have a better solution, I'm going to go here to the empties and go to the arrow, and then I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. And then I'm going to click on this empty here in the outliner, and then I'm going to hold down Shift, click on this empty, Control P, object, and then I'm going to call this empty 1, this empty 2, just to establish this kind of hierarchy. So this guy is now going to allow us to rotate it, and this guy is going to allow us to spin it. It's cool. It's fun. It's like, you know, the smallest rig ever. Okay, now get your sphere to be within this spot right up here. I can press play and make sure, yeah, he works. He does fun things. Make sure he goes down here. Cool. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and Shift D and get a couple spheres, just a few, so that we can view our animation, and he kind of goes crazy, and you can kind of adjust things as you go. So I'm going to click on him and just kind of move him since he's throwing a fit. All right, cool. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to worry about the animation. So I'm going to bring these guys to the ground, and then what's really cool is I want them to start properly. So I'm going to select them all, hit F3, and type in apply visual transform. So click on apply visual transform. So now if we go back to the beginning of the timeline, these guys are going to be here. These guys are just going to allow me to visualize the animation before it starts to get a little heavy in visualizing all of the spheres. So now let's go ahead and animate number 2, which is going to be, animate number 1, which is going to be this. So what we're going to do, make sure you are in the Bezier keyframe, so it's going to make it look nice. Going to go up, and let's start animating. So imagine that these guys are going to get shoved all the way up here. So you try to imagine where they're going to be, and that's how you can kind of have fun with the animation. So I'm going to click a keyframe, and then I'm going to bring them 20 frames over, and then bring it to about here. And then now we can just kind of look at that. Cool, so now they're going to fall down. So bring them up, let them fall about to frame 50, click the keyframe again, and then let's bring it some more, something like that. How does that look? And then now just let these guys kind of fall, keyframe, and now I kind of want it to go that way. So we're going to go over here and bring it like this. Now we can kind of see how that looks. So now it's really having fun with all of these guys moving around. And I really don't like that they can slide behind here because that's going to kind of ruin everything. So what you can do is go to this guy right here. And then I am going to select all of these guys by holding down Shift. And then I'm going to scale them so that those spheres can't go behind them. I don't want that. And then we can go back here to the big guy and bring it back. Okay, so now we can go back to our animation. So see how they can stop? That's what I wanted. It's really going to help with all of the spheres kind of going nuts. Really cool. So let them fall to right about there, maybe 233. Hit the keyframe, go to about here, and I want it to go that way. Set about here. Now we can kind of view that. And then next we're just going to do a bunch of new spheres and duplicate it around the line so that we can have some fun. And that was just way too fast. So something like this. All right, so I like that. Now let's go ahead and just make a bunch of new spheres and make sure they stay within the little lid that we created. And this, that's probably enough. Now I can press play. So what you can do is, now that you kind of have established the animation, unfortunately, I'm going to clear my animation and let all these guys settle. So let them all settle to right about here, and then select them all. And then again, do it in Apply, Visual Transform. And then now what we can do is we can go ahead and redo our animation. Now that we kind of have a feel for how everything's going to look, how everything's going to act, we can do a much better, more interesting animation, or just do this same exact thing. So I'm going to go ahead and redo my animation, and then we will move on to lighting and shading. All right, so now I'm done with my new keyframes. Once you have established and like everything you're seeing, again, make sure to save because this next part might crash your computer. So click on this button right here and go here to the rigid body world, and then go here, make sure you specify 300 frames, and I'm going to go ahead and bake. We're going to bake it into keyframes so that it's solid whenever we make any more changes. All right, so my bake literally took half of a second. May take longer than you have. My scene's pretty low poly. The higher poly, the longer it's going to take, but now everything is really good, and we can move on to lighting and shading. So I'm going to click on this guy here, and just to do it, I'm going to click on the mask modifier, and that's really going to remove it for good. So now I'm going to go ahead and position my viewport to wherever I want my camera to be. I'm going to hit Shift A and get my camera, Control Alt 0, snap it to view. For me, I like an 85mm lens, so click on your camera, click on the little green camera icon, and go here. I'm going to do 85. Pick whatever focal length you prefer. I'm going to hit G and middle click to zoom it out. All right, so let's do a little bit of shading. We do need to unwrap these models, so I'm going to hit Tab and A to select everything. Hit U, and I'm going to do Smart UV Project and bring your angle limit to 89. And then on this guy, you Smart UV Project. So that's going to get both of them looking right. So I'm going to click on the Cycles button. I like to use Cycles. And then we're going to get some free image textures. But first, if any of you have real-time materials, the wood materials, specifically this cross wood, looks really good on these. I mean, you can just play with the scale. And then for these pillars here, the metal materials right here, the metal grain, you can just go ahead and make that a lighter color and then bring that roughness down to have some fun. And then for the spheres, the basics, this basic surface just looks really, really nice. And then you can go ahead and play with different colors to make this look awesome. For that, so that's for you real-time materials users. Let's go ahead to ambientcg.com and get those materials. So we're here at ambientcg.com. It's all CC0 free, really cool image textures. And I typed in wood, and we're going to go ahead and I'm going to say we'll just pick this guy here. Just really pick anyone that speaks to you. And then get the 4K PNG and go ahead and download that and unzip it. So before we apply materials, I do want to bevel all of my edges. So click on each one and then add in the bevel modifier. And then I'm just going to go ahead, right click, shade smooth, and then we're going to bevel modifier this guy as well. Shade smooth. All right, so that's all we had to do for that. We're going to go here to the shading tab. And I'm going to go ahead and remove my materials and add new ones. So let's just add the material for this big base plate. So I'm going to click on new. Now with the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, we're going to hit Control T. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up the file where my materials are saved. So we got I picked wood 026 for those of you who want to copy exactly what I have. So I'm clicking this guy, and then I'm going to go hit here, and I'm going to click on the same material. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight these guys, and then right here I'm going to hit Control Shift D, Control Shift D. That's going to keep it connected, and we'll go ahead and get the roughness. We're going to go here to non-color and plug that into the roughness. And then what I wanted to do, because I didn't entirely like the roughness on this specific material, is I put a color ramp on it. Then I crunched in that color ramp. See how it's looking a little bit more alive? I really like that. Okay, so that really kind of heightened, maybe a mid-gray, really heightened the roughness on this. And then it's really going to look even better. Oops. Control Shift D. Let's get a bump node. This is really going to finalize this really good material. And then we're going to get a displacement, plug that into the height. We're not going to do real displacement because it's not necessary. Distance at 0.1, and then just kind of play with your strength till you like it. I don't like a whole lot, just subtle, just a subtle amount of strength. Okay, now we can go here. I'm going to get a really basic metallic material, kind of a mid color here, and bring your roughness so it's a little fun. And then these guys, we're going to keep it kind of a plastic. I'm going to actually keep regular roughness, give it a clear coat, and then we're going to get blue. And then I'm going to click this guy, hit the drop down, and get this new material. But in this case, click that number 2. Let's get a red. Hit that drop down, and we're going to click that number 2, and we're going to get a green. And so now that we're done making materials, we're going to go back to the layout view, go to kind of the material preview. And what you can do, this is really fun, is go ahead and select a bunch of spheres that you want to have the green material. And then select that green, Control L, link materials. And there's a fun order to this. The last sphere being the one with the material you want them to have. All right, and then these pillars all need to have that simple metallic material. Control L, link the materials. Okay, so now all of our materials and things are set up. You can do whatever you want. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit N to go out of the N panel, and we're gonna go and add our lighting. So I like to look at where my camera is so that we can get our lighting to look nice. So I want one light to be hitting it from this direction that we're looking. So let's go ahead and get an area light. I'm gonna hit G to kind of move it over here. We're gonna go here to a disk. I'm gonna hit R twice to rotate it. And then we can scale it up a little bit. Now we're gonna go to that view. We're gonna do 1000 on the strength. and then bring your spread in. Here's why. We have some shadow, but I want to have like pretty distinctive shadows. And so bring your spread out till you have these nice distinctive shadows. And then maybe we can kind of bring it up a little bit, hit R to point it directly in the middle. All right, there we have that. And then now you can bring your strength down till it's not, you know, super obnoxious. And then get another area light, hit G. We're gonna move it up like this. And then we're gonna give it another disk. The reason why we're changing it to a disk is simply because of reflections. We're gonna see it in the reflection, so I would prefer it not be a square. And then bring your distance in. You can actually even bring in the size. So see how you can see the size there? I'm hitting R twice. And then you can kind of get really cookie cutter with that if you want. And then bring up that size. And then I'm gonna go a little farther up. Now, last thing you can do is get in an HDRI. I like to go to Polyhaven, and in this case, we're gonna go here to the HDRIs, and I'm gonna pick the indoor, and just pick an indoor one. This one right here, Pine Attic, is the one that I picked for my scene. So you can click on it and download, hit the little download button right there. And then we're gonna go here to the world, and then click on environment texture, open, and just go ahead and click it. So now we have an HDRI, and we're gonna do a strength of 0.3, and that's just gonna fill out our shadows. And then let's go ahead and get a plane. I hit R twice just to kind of adjust it to kind of look at us. I'm gonna hit G and bring it out. I'm hitting G, hitting R, and then scale it up. And now we have this background. And if you like how dark it is, that's cool. But what you can do is add a material and go here to value and do a value of like 2, and that's gonna brighten it up just so you can have a nice bright background, or you can, you know, bring your color down if you like. But I like this. So now I'm going to press play in cycles and just see how this looks. We're done. We're all finished. This took quite a while to make, but it was really good. So click on the printer icon and select your resolution. I like 1920 by 1080, and then go over here, and I would highly recommend a PNG sequence just so you can render it now and later and all that fun stuff. So what I'm going to do here is set up a, click here, set up your folder, select that folder and render animation. But if you really just want Blender to make you an MP4, no compiling, go from PNG to FFmpeg video, encoding to MP4, and then medium quality to perceptually lossless render animation. And when you're done, you're gonna have a really cool animation similar to mine. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget about the real-time materials sale, 35% off. You can check all that out, linked in my bio. Use the code 2years on Blender Market. Really helps support the channel. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.